Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to go through the risers, the fallers, Freeman's favorites, and yes, our sickle starts ahead of what should be an ever eventful Week 7 in the NFL. So joining me as they do every single Thursday here on the Fantasy Life Show, Dwain, the Rock McFarland, and Matthew, the Oracle Freeman. Dwain, happy Week 7.
Man, happy Week 7. That's a really cool nickname, the Oracle. And I know you got it from something funny, but like people that don't know that, they probably think like you're like a super conceited, like know-it-all person. Like you really think you're an Oracle. Right. Yeah. You were like, that was my intent, was to show my true self.
Yeah, but I can play it off as like, oh, I'm not really this way. It's just some reference to a show that people maybe cared about 15 years ago. I'm not really a conceited jerk.
Freeman, you got to star in the debut episode of the league. I don't know why you don't embrace this more.
Yes, that was definitely me, the little kid licking mustard off of the hot dog. That was me 15 years ago in the debut episode of the league.
He had great fantasy takes. I think you should be embracing this, Freeman, and it is your Twitter handle, so I guess you are. But regardless, everyone, Freeman does have some pretty good takes, and we are now calling him the Oracle for the rest of the time anyway. So plenty to get to today with our quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end ranks. First, though, going to be running through quite a bit of news during what was, again, a chaotic Wednesday. No major trades this time around. Cam Akers staying put, at least for these 24 hours. But yeah, with that, let's get into it. Starting out with quarterback, we cannot have nice things because Drake May is getting an MRI done on his knee. Now, he did practice in full, held his usual press conference as a starting QB, so let's not freak out just yet, everybody. That said, it does seem like something we do need to monitor. Also, Freeman, we do have Russell Wilson taking first-team reps and even getting a report from Adam Schefter, noting that he is trending towards starting Sunday night. So not exactly the best matchup to be walking into the starting lineup to against the New York Jets. So again, I don't think anyone out there is thinking about starting Russell Wilson, but how does his presence under center help guys like George Pickens, Jalen Warren, and Najee Harris, amongst others, Freeman?
The Pickens thing is interesting, especially because the Jets are dealing with some injuries in the secondary. Maybe 3 starters could be out for them. And so this isn't a defense I would normally want to go against, but maybe we actually see George Pickens get a boost up the rankings. And with Russell Wilson, I would say maybe being a little more willing than Justin Fields to throw deep. It feels like there could be more volatility with a George Pickens blow-up game, but that's not something I would really want to be counting on. But it does make Pickens a little more intriguing than he otherwise would be. But basically everyone else in that offense still, it feels like a hands-off type of situation.
Hopefully get some Pat Fryermuth goodness here soon as well. Almost had a touchdown last week that just got nullified by Fields, just barely crossing the line. Someone who has had a pretty elite route rate so far this season. Only other quarterback note, we do have Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson starting off the week with a full practice. Cameron Wolfe, that he is expected to return to the field this Sunday against the Dolphins, barring any setbacks per sources. As always, take that with a grain of salt. This is the Indianapolis Colts we're talking about. With the running backs, guys, practicing in full. Devon Achane coming off the bye with the concussion. Great news. Seems like he is about to clear the protocol. Nick Chubb coming off the knee, and also a fantastic article in the Players Tribune. You guys should definitely check that out. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire with that illness. Maybe going to be a shorter stint with Kareem Hunt as the workhorse back in KC than we thought. More on that in just a little bit. Limited in practice, Jordan Mason with the shoulder injury. James Cook with the toe. Travis Etienne with the hamstring. Brian Robinson with the knee, and Devin Singletary with the groin. So situations that will continue to be monitored. Also, sadly, in Indianapolis, not getting Jonathan Taylor back on the practice field just yet. Still out with that ankle injury. Joining him is Trey Sermon with a knee injury, which is new. Last week it was the collarbone. I will note, last week we saw Michael Pittman with his back and Josh Downs with his toe. Both of them did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. Got back to a full session on Friday and then played through their questionable tags. So not going to throw the towel in just yet on JT or Sermon. Dwayne, no, I do think we're getting close to looking at a probable absence for Aaron Jones, the Vikings lead RB, not just because of the Cam Akers trade, all jokes aside, but also the hip injury has apparently sank down to the dreaded hamstring. Not looking great for Aaron ahead of what could be a potential shootout against the Detroit Lions. So, Dwayne, if Aaron Jones is out of the lineup, how are you approaching Ty Chandler?
Yeah, so Ty Chandler for me would move to that mid-range running back 2 area of the ranks, Ian. I mean, we're talking about a good offense, with the Vikings. They are playing against the Lions. We have the potential for a major, shootout type of game here in the NFC North. But the Lions are good against the run. Like, they're the third best team right now, giving up only 69 yards per game. But we do have the third highest team total in this game. So, again, thinking there's this opportunity for shootout. And we did see in a lesser version of the Vikings offense last year at the end of the season, a 4-game sample where basically Ty Chandler was the starter for the Vikings. He scored 24.7, 7.7, 9.4, and 11. So he averaged 13.2. I would expect more than that. I think he's probably like 15, 16 points per game in this offense, and he would have an opportunity to give you more of a running back one performance. He's a priority if he's available.
We'll note that as good as that Detroit Lions front seven has been, obviously losing arguably the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year in Aiden Hutchinson, not going to help matters. Defensive line group that also is continuing to be without Marcus Davenport. So Max Crosby, get that plane ticket to Detroit. Just saying. Steelers running back Najee Harris with with a ribs injury, also not practicing, joining our one true kick return god, Cordero Patterson, on the sideline for now. Also Ramondre Stevenson with the foot, Tajay Spears with that hamstring, both not practicing. And note that it's still looking iffy on Jonathan Brooks with that knee injury. Panthers coach Dave Canales noted that he is still a week-to-week situation. Similar sentiment to Packers rookie running back Marshawn Lloyd, eligible to return off IR, but he is not practicing this week. LaFleur did say he is getting closer. Over at wide receiver, Freedman practicing in full and expected to play Sunday night. Davante Adams, Gangrene's new wide receiver one. How confident are you in getting him up there into that upside wide receiver two conversation in this tough matchup against the Steelers?
How confident? I mean, not all that confident, to be honest. It is the first game back. He does have to compete with Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams presumably is gone, but Alan Lazard is still there as someone who will inevitably get more targets than anyone would want, except for, maybe his family members. But yeah, Adams, does he feel like someone who should be in that high-end wide receiver 2 category? Yes. Eventually he will get there, but in his first week with the team, I'm probably going to be a little more cautious, but that's not a surprise. I am the human wet blanket.
I have him up there at wide receiver 16 in my first round of ranks, which I will admit, probably a little bit optimistic. I do think Dwain's wide receiver 26 and Freedman's wide receiver 30 ranks probably a bit, more safer again, just at least his first week. Also practicing in full, 49ers rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall with that chest injury. Many men wish death upon him. He is back though. Let's get Ricky out there and hopefully again help spearhead this 49ers offense. Limited in practice, Cooper Kupp with an ankle, Malik Neighbors with the concussion. However, the Giants are optimistic he'll play this week. Thank God for Dwain and I's bankrolls. And also Packers wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, somewhat surprisingly limited with that shoulder injury, still considered week to week, though. I will be surprised if he suits up on Sunday. Not practicing Jacoby Myers with the ankle, Mike Williams with the personal, aka about to be traded. And accordingly, Diana Rossini has reported the Chargers, Saints, and Steelers are among the teams interested in Mike Williams. We'll say, guys, just hasn't really looked all that great this year, coming off the knee injury. Not exactly someone who's made a big habit of separating over the years, sort of that archetype that does tend to fall off quick in football land. Out for Thursday night, Chris Olave with the concussion and Rashid Shaheed with the knee. And with the Shaheed situation, guys, undergoing meniscus surgery. If it's a trim, he's going to miss 2 to 6 weeks. If it is a repair, 4 to 6 months. So would try to hold him if you can, just for another day or two before we find out whether it is going to be the former or latter surgery. But yeah, not looking great for what previously have been one of the best draft picks of the fantasy season. Sean McDermott, Bills head coach, said no decision on if Amari Cooper will play Sunday just yet. And we'll note the Chargers getting just a little bit of help to the wide receiver room. DJ Chark designated to return from IR. His 21-day practice window has been opened. Over with tight end Dwain, return of TJ Hawkinson appears to be imminent. Vikings coming off that bye, obviously has not played yet this season, coming back from that ACL injury. Limited in practice, so not a guarantee, but it does seem like he will be on the field sooner rather than later, which is pretty great when you look at the Vikings' upcoming schedule.
Yeah, the next 4 weeks are like amazing. And the Vikings are just a good offense. We just got through talking about Ty Chandler. It's a team that we want to be bullish on. So for me with Hawkinson, I think our expectation, we've got to be, measured in it, just kind of like what Friedman was talking about a little bit earlier with Davante Adams. Don't expect him to come in and be at 80% route participation. My guess is it'll be more like 40 to 50%. But 40 to 50% of TJ Hawkinson, who's a really good player, is still going to be better than a lot of other guys in the ranks. So probably not as high as what some people would think, Ian. I have him at tight end 16, assuming he's going to play about half the snaps this weekend. But that still puts him ahead of guys that I think are in full-time roles that are just not quite the same level as he is as far as talent, right? Target earner, those things. So I've got him ahead of names of like K. Dotton, Juwan Johnson, Colby Parkinson, Noah Fant, Tyler Conklin. Those are all guys we know are in full-time roles. But if I'm getting TJ Hawkinson back, I'm still going to roll the dice on him over those. But I've got him behind other players like Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft. So he's right in that range. And a lot of those, honestly, are coin flips with Hawkinson. Comes down to like your preference. Just realize he's not going to play a full-time role. You're really hoping he scores a touchdown. But that's every tight end. Every tight end, you're hoping they score a touchdown. I mean, that's how you get your fantasy points for the most part at the position.
Mention that schedule again. Lions this week, then the Rams, Colts, and Jaguars over the course of this next month. So wouldn't be surprised if the guy who essentially tied Travis Kelce for the tight end 1 honors last season on a per game basis is right back in that top 5, maybe even top 3 once we get confirmation that he is healthy and back in that full-time role. Also note Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert not practicing with that hamstring injury, so be more and more opportunities for A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith accordingly. And finally, Saints tight end Taysom Hill is doubtful for Thursday night with that rib issue. So if you do need a tight end, guys, Juwan Johnson could be that guy, pal. Finally, Broncos cornerback Pastor Etienne II also out with the concussion on Thursday night, and Giants left tackle Andrew Thomas is expecting to miss the rest of the season due to Liz Frank surgery. So not ideal there for the New York Football Giants. We will see what happens. At least Malik Neighbors should be back for this Sunday's Saquon Barkley revenge game showdown. So guys, that was the news. Now time to get into all of our ranking updates. But first, a quick word from our friends over at New Era. Get my Chargers hat on. As a kid that grew up mostly in the 2000s, how could you not love this powder blue? Shout out to the great LaDainian Tomlinson. And guys, with New Era, you can join the fight against cancer with New Era Cap, the official cap of the NFL. Each cap from the Crucial Catch collection not only represents your favorite team in bold colors, but also promotes the prevention and early detection of cancer. Wear your colors proudly and help us tackle cancer head on with the official cap of Crucial Catch. Charitable contributions are awarded by the NFL Foundation to the American Cancer Society. Risers, fallers, Freedman's favorite, and the sicko start of the week. That's right. It is Rankings Thursday here on the Fantasy Live show. And accordingly, fellas, let's get right into it with our riser of the week. Dwain, Bucks quarterback Baker Mayfield going up against the Ravens. Should be a really fun Monday Night Football shootout. And ultimately, we're looking at the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks in the NFL right now. What a time to be alive.
Is that not insane? I know. I knew Baker was doing well, but like every time when I force myself to go actually look at the ranks, I'm like QB2 with 22.9 fantasy points per game. And that actually really matters a lot, guys. So for passers, I have not found anything that's more predictive of future fantasy success than past fantasy success. So their points per game. We've got a utilization score for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, because we figured out ways to say, hey, we can actually get a little better than what we get with fantasy points raw. I've combed through everything, guys. I have not come up with anything for a quarterback, so it really matters. And we're now sitting at a 6-week sample. You look at this offense, they've got a new coordinator with Liam Cohen. They're really doing nice things with Chris Godwin. You've got Mike Evans. He's a little banged up. Need to keep an eye on him. Even getting K. Dotton a little more involved, and now potentially integrating some more explosive running backs into the game. Like, it's just an offense that I think we at this point have to say, you know what? We need to be bullish on the Bucs. And did you guys not see the special where he goes in, does for with Eli Manning, and they do the joke on all the Buccaneers fans? I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. And he dresses up.
Yeah.
Yes, and he goes with the fans through this tour, like these super fans they invite to come, to come up to the stadium. And the whole day they don't know Baker Mayfield is on this tour with them. Like, he's touching the footballs and stuff, and people are looking at him. Dude, he's hilarious. He is a dude's dude. I really do. I mean, you can't help but love Baker Mayfield. And so it's awesome that he's doing what he's doing. And then you got to talk about the matchup here. We've got this complete funnel defense with the Ravens, number 1 in the league against the run, last in the league against the pass. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. How often, Friedman, do we actually see that much of a polar opposite lineup? It's pretty rare. So looking at the strength of the Bucs and looking at what they're going to want to do, yeah, I think it's hard to look at Baker Mayfield as anything outside of a top 10 quarterback. And so I've got him at QB9, Ian, and I feel like I might be too low. But I did reach out to Ian yesterday. Ian, I have to say, Ian's been the best Baker Mayfield supporter of this group. But I saw, Ian, you had him at QB 12. I was like, what's happening? Ian immediately blamed it on a technical difficulty on the site, but I don't know.
Yes, because I accidentally had Dak Prescott ranked, who's on bye, Dwain. So I am going to plead the technical difficulty card on this one. But all hijinks aside, Freeman really has been impressive to see just the overall career resurgence from Baker Mayfield. Someone who, I'm sure in the dynasty ranks after the first season in Cleveland, was knocking on that top 5 door at the position. And not saying he's back there yet, but at a certain point, since week 1 of last season, only Jordan Love has more games with 3+ passing touchdowns. Not saying Baker's going to finish as the QB2 in fantasy, but if you have him outside your top 10 over the rest of the season, man, not really sure what you're doing.
Yeah, the Baker glow up, the Baker renaissance, whatever you want to call it, it has been amazing because I entered this season thinking that last year was probably going to be the high point, and he's been able to progress beyond that, which is just absolutely fascinating to see. If you're a Browns fan, you absolutely have to hate yourself. Even more than that, you have to hate management, ownership, anyone who had anything to do with what the team is looking like now at the quarterback position, because you had Baker Mayfield and you let him go. And what he has done this year has been absolutely amazing. No one expected this, but he has been a top 8 fantasy finisher in every game this year except for one. Wow. And then Dwain mentioned it, all of the weapons that he has around him. And then the matchup this week, the Ravens number 3 in largest fantasy boost allowed to quarterbacks, an absolute smash spot for Baker Mayfield. I have him as, I think, the QB7, but you can make an argument for pushing him up even a little bit higher than that because he's also a little bit better of a runner than people expect to.
Yeah. Career high marks in rushing yards per game this year. He can scoot. He can scoot, guys. Fearless as a scrambler. Almost wish he'd take a little better care of himself, but always plays with that fire. So sorry, Browns fans. I know we've already been talking enough bad things about your squad throughout the Amari Cooper discourse. And yeah, having to watch Baker Mayfield and even Joe Flacco ball out more Sundays than not, certainly not helping matters. So Baker Mayfield, our riser of the week. That said, Dwain, the faller is... Are we allowed to say this? Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray. Are you going against Matthew Berry, Dwain? This is your call, all right? I'm hands off here.
I'm not going against Matthew Berry, but I think Matthew would also tell you that he's disappointed. We were all really high on Kyler. It's a dual threat quarterback, but the big issue has not been what he's doing on the ground game. He's actually been pretty productive there. It's the fact that we're not getting the boost from Kyler as a passer via the integration of Marvin Harrison Jr. into the lineup, as well as, Trey McBride, a young stud tight end. I just thought there was a big opportunity for Kyler to potentially push towards being like a 250 yard per game passer. That has not come to fruition. In fact, he's sitting at 198 yards per contest. And I went back last week, Ian, and I watched every single passing play for Marvin Harrison Jr. because I was just trying to get my arms, around him and what's going on. Like, is this the guy that maybe we've got a little bit overrated? I always look at the data first, but if at the end of the week, like I've got 6 or 7 names in my mind, I'm like, okay, based on this information, I actually want to go watch the players. Like I've done it with Amari Cooper, done it with a lot of different players. But when I did this for Harrison, my real takeaway wasn't that Harrison was a problem. It was really, oh my God, like Kyler is missing him wide open. Like there are plays where Marvin Harrison Jr. is running across the middle of the field wide open. Kyler doesn't throw it to him, and he waits until he clears into coverage and then throws Marvin Harrison Jr. into coverage. I don't know if it's something to do with not being able to see, if it's a height thing. I really have no clue. But Kyler's not seeing the field very well. He's not progressing the way I would have hoped for in this offense. And so that's the big reason he gets the downgrade. And then, it's a decently tough matchup here against the Chargers. I will say the Chargers, a little bit of smoke and mirrors. They've not played very many good quarterbacks yet. So I don't know we know truly where they're at. If you look at them from a boost standpoint, like what Friedman was talking about earlier, they're pretty much neutral. But on the surface, they're only giving up 173 yards passing per game. At 6 games, the truth's probably somewhere in the middle. But then at the end of the day, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, what's Kyler? Probably another soft matchup for their defense at this point. And if they don't have Marvin Harrison Jr., that's going to be an even bigger struggle this weekend. So not out of my top 12. Kyler's good enough that he could at any point, man, drop 30 fantasy points. But it's just not coming in the way with the consistency that I would hope for. I just don't feel – honestly, I feel like Kyler is holding this offense back after watching it.
honestly hasn't been that different of a performance than Justin Fields, who has outscored Kyler this year. And just in terms of passing yards per game, Kyler's at 197, Fields at 184. So, hey, Josh Allen's at 193, not just trying to pile on Kyler here. Still the QB 11 in fantasy points per game, to Dwain's point. But Friedman, I was right there with Dwain and also our fearless leader, Matthew Berry, thinking Kyler could potentially rip off his top 5, if not top 3 season. And at least for now, man, seems like more of a pipe dream than ever.
Yeah, super disappointing. I have him ranked this week as the QB 15. I'm the lowest on him in the staff, and there's room to bump him up a little bit from this, because it is worth noting the Chargers secondary extremely injured right now. Number 1 cornerback Asante Samuel is out on IR, and then the 3 starting cornerbacks after that, all of them are injured right now. And so we just kind of need to see where they are on the injury report as this week progresses. But if those guys return to health, and if there's no Marvin Harrison in this game, and I'm a little bit skeptical he ends up returning because concussion, most of the time guys miss a week, then in that instance, I think QB 15 is justified. And so it is a situation, just want to monitor the injuries around Kyler Murray, but Kyler on his own isn't the kind of player right now who seems to elevate the other players around him or elevate his game whenever he has the opportunity. So the fact that I'm thinking about all of these injuries and not just thinking about how awesome Kyler is right now on his own as a player, that is pretty telling.
Not having Joey Bosa potentially on that D-line as well, never ideal. So yes, again, a matchup that is banged up. And also to Dwayne's point, haven't been overly tested by opposing passing game. This season, the Chargers have faced the Raiders, Panthers, Steelers, Chiefs, and then the Broncos. So maybe things get rectified, but
it doesn't get easier than that.
You're not wrong.
Easier than that.
I don't know, though. It might. Because after this week, they get the Saints, the Browns, and the Titans. So that's the reason why we didn't exactly cut the Chargers. Possible? I have no idea, man. What a freaking stretch. So we'll see what happens there with the Bolts. Feeling good about the Chargers DST after this week at a minimum. So, guys, now it is time for Friedman's favorite and Commanders. Jaden Daniels against the Panthers. Friedman, you're going to have to explain this one, man.
Yeah, really being bold here. For me, the question is do I have him as the number 1 quarterback this week? That was the question. And I feel like I really wrestled with this. I have him at number 2. By the time this game kicks off, I might just have him as the number 1 quarterback on the slate. And what Jaden Daniels has done is absolutely unbelievable. I think it's worth asking yourself, is he already the best dual threat quarterback we have in the league right now? And I know it seems like blasphemous to say that because Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP and having a better year this year than he had last year. But Jaden Daniels leads the league with a 75.3% completion rate, leads the league with a 15% scramble rate. It really does not get any better than that for a dual threat quarterback. And then the matchup. All right, going against this Panthers defense, number 30 in defensive dropback EPA, they are bad. And then on top of that, they are injured. They are definitely without players at all 3 levels. Defensive tackle, Derek Brown, linebacker, Shaq Thomas, free safety, Jordan Fuller. And then on top of that, they could be without their top edge rusher, Jadeveon Clowney, and then their top remaining off-ball linebacker, Josie Jewell. So it's not just great player going against bad defense. It's awesome player going against bad and wounded defense in a game that has one of the highest totals on the slate. The Commanders overs this year, 5-1. Panthers overs also 5-1. Both of these teams, the games that they are in, exceed the game total by an average of over a touchdown per game. So it's not just great matchup. It's great matchup in a high scoring environment. Honestly, Jaden Daniels probably should be the number 1 quarterback this week.
Ian, do you hear that? Do you hear that? You know what that sound is? 150 yards and 2 touchdowns to Deontay Johnson on the other side. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm taking away from Friedman here.
I was just going to say, man, I wish there could be a second pass catcher in Washington to really get behind, because obviously Terry McLaurin's doing great things, but maybe Noah Brown, this could be one of those boom weeks. There's going to be some complementary pieces that get stuff going. Noah Brown does lead the NFL in defensive pass interference yards. Maybe, just maybe, I got something up my sleeve here for Dwayne and I's bold predictions on Friday. Guess you guys have to come back and find out for that one. Takes us to our sicko start of the week. Not so much of a sicko start in my rankings or Freeman's. We got him QB8, but Dwayne, talk about Sam Darnold and his first of really what is 4 consecutive great matchups this weekend against the aforementioned banged up Lions defense.
Well, yeah, and technically the definition for a sicko start is, are people starting this player or not? And right now he's only in 22% of starting lineups. Guys,
Wow.
you've got to get Sam Darnold into your lineup this weekend. There's going to be a lot of you that are sitting on passers that I've actually got ranked below Sam Darnold. We've already talked about one of them. I would start Sam Darnold over Kyler Murray this weekend. I would start Sam Darnold over Patrick Mahomes this weekend. I would actually do that. So when you look at Darnold, just people aren't giving him enough credit, Ian. You know, he's ranks 15th right now in fantasy points per game at 17.1, but that number could be far higher. So the Vikings have led by 9+ points on 55% of their plays. Okay, that it doesn't matter the fact that the Vikings are actually more of a pass-friendly offense than people know. Their dropback rate over expected is 3%. So in neutral situations, they're actually throwing the ball more than the league average. But the situation has just been so dire. Not dire. It's been good for them. They're winning. But they just don't have to pass the ball in the second half of a game. So this weekend, we actually have another offense on the other side that we know is really going to push them, even though the Vikings have improved on defense. We get this matchup with the Lions. You got a 26.3 team total. That is the third highest on the slate. So yeah, Sam Darnold going to really surprise some people this weekend. I think, Ian, he could throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, that is totally on the table this weekend.
And honestly, maybe it's just that QB 27 dud against the Jets that's leaving a sour taste in everyone's mouth. I mean, before that, guys, QB 14, QB 4, QB 9, and QB 5. Dwain, I think you said it, man. Really wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world over the course of this next month. Darnold is the QB 1, especially if we can get some more competitive games going on here. So really fun matchup. Vikings and Lions, the top 2-point differentials in the entire NFL. Man, I don't know what they're putting in those Gatorade coolers in the NFC North, but, I'm a fan. So, guys, that was our quarterback ranks. Now we're moving on to running back right after a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground in football every weekend. That is what fall is all about, and you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets instantly, and you can stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Running back season, fellas. And let's start off with a riser coming out of Cincinnati. Dwayne, talk about Bengals RB Chase Brown, who certainly seemed to be the clear RB2 at the start of the season, now looking much, much, much more like a 1A, 1B.
Yeah, and I have to say, this was a huge week for risers in the running back ranks. So you guys go check out the full article. Also, I've got over 20 players that are like caveat situations for this weekend due to injuries. I think 50 of the 20, if that makes any sense, are running back situations. And so they're all detailed in there. So if you're basically trying to wait and see how the injury news goes and what does that mean for them in the ranks, it's all outlined for you there. But yeah, Chase Brown, this is one that we really needed to get to because a lot of people have questions like, is this a guy that now needs to be in my fantasy lineups or not? And what I'm going to say is I do think, Ian, that he has taken over the lead rushing role on the team. I think that's the only thing we can be confident of right now. However, last week he did have a 54% route participation. That was a season high. It's really been more Zach Moss leading the way. Now, last week, Zach Moss was coming into that game with a toe injury. But Chase Brown was coming into the game with a quad injury. Okay, Zach Moss fumbled, didn't come back on the field. Guess what? Chase Brown fumbled after that, and he did come back on the field. So it's one data point. I don't want to get crazy about what his role is in the passing game, but what I can tell you is over the last 3 weeks, he's led the team in rushing attempts every single week. And if he does unlock this passing game upside, and he's now getting over 50% of that, Ian, he's going to really quickly move up the ranks. For this week, I have him as a low-end running back, too. There is a little bit of risk with this profile. These situations can be fluid, guys. We could see it flip back to Zach Moss, but right now, based on the data we have with the last 3-week trend, Brown is a guy and he's playing against the Browns, who've not been that good against the run, giving up 138 yards per contest. And I don't know how much fight the Browns have left in them. Like, I think this could be we could be in a situation where like the whole team is just kind of fed up with this. This is a toxic workplace environment, guys. It is a toxic workplace environment. We've got a great comeback story with Nick Chubb, and I hate that this is all going on at the same time as that. And Ian, you mentioned that article earlier. That was an amazing article from Nick Chubb. You guys got to go read that. But bottom line is Chase Brown, low end running back 2. But if he keeps this passing game work, man, he's going to really be knocking on the door of low end running back 1 because he's such an explosive playmaker.
To Dwain's point, that Myles Garrett-led reigning number 1 ranked defense in the NFL just hasn't quite had the same bite this season. Triple-digit rushing yards allowed in each and every game. And over the last 3 weeks, man, 152 to the Raiders, 215 to the Commanders, $116 to the Eagles last week. So, Freeman, I mean, at this point, Chase Brown, over these last 3 weeks, he joins Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard, and Alvin Kamara, only RBs with 50-plus PPR points. So, not saying he's an RB1 just yet, but certainly seems like we're trending that way.
The big thing is the offense that he's in. This Bengals offense has looked fantastic. And if he actually does become the number 1 back in that offense, then it's not like you think of him like he's exactly Joe Mixon from previous years, but he might start to approach that. The big thing that I want to see on top of everything that Dwain mentioned is his usage near the goal line. To this point, Zach Moss has still been the guy getting those opportunities, those high leverage opportunities to score touchdowns. And so Chase Brown, it would be great if he maintains the rushing role that he has. Fantastic if he's able to seize more of the work in the aerial attack, but is he going to get the opportunities close to the goal line? We haven't really seen him get that opportunity yet. If he starts to get those, then yes, at that point, he is a low-end RB1 with room for more, because that room is all just based on how awesome this offense has looked with Joe Burrow and a fully healthy set of wide receivers there.
I will say real quick, in the last couple of games, he's actually gotten a little bit of the work over the last 3 games. And if you look at when Zach Moss got his opportunities, it was one of those it was his drive. It's not like Chase Brown got subbed out and then it was like, oh, we're going to give the goal line carry to Zach Moss, which is something we're always kind of trying to dig into the data and tease out. So I think it probably comes down more, Friedman, honestly, to who's on the field for that drive that's getting those carries. If it happens to be the Chase Brown drive, like, he's going to get them. If not, it's going to be Zach Moss. So you're a little bit in the hand. You kind of put that one in the hands of the fantasy gods. You don't know for sure, but I don't think he's been eliminated from that role. I think they're sharing it.
All right, get it
Fantasy gods as well as the sheesh gods. Last week we did have a 1-yard touchdown run by Brown, nullified on a hold. That's why we always spend a little bit of time going beyond the box score here on Tuesdays on the Fantasy Life show. Chase Brown is the riser, but let's talk about a faller, guys. Kareem Hunt, Chiefs RB1. Dwain, coming off a game where he had 28 touches. That said, might not see that same sort of positive game script against the 49ers, and we could be nearing the return of Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, and it's not so much anything with Kareem Hunt where it's like, I'm just certain he's going to fall. I'm just not confident enough yet in the fact that he really is the lead back and that's what the Chiefs are going to stick with. He did not look that good. He looked like, basically a below average running back that you're out there handing a lot of carries to. So I think that always leaves room for someone else to get involved. You just mentioned it. We got Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back. Carson Steele has essentially given his opportunity away to be part of this backfield with really 2 major mistakes, but he's still getting out there. And so when you look at that with Samaje Perine still picking up the pass downs, I still think there's a little bit of risk here to the fact that you could have a situation where if Kareem Hunt, they decide that he's not looking good, they could easily in any game script just decide, okay, we're going to feature someone else a little bit more, or we're going to make this more of a watered down committee. Now, if we come out this week and after CEH is back and he comes out and he has, another situation where, like, he had a 7.7 utilization score last weekend. That's really good. That takes into account his whole role plus his performance. It's knocking him a little bit for not being that efficient, but that's still a really strong score. And we know that the Chiefs are more willing to lean into the running game right now because they don't have all these weapons anymore in the pass attack. So I do think the Chiefs are going to try to stay balanced. There is potential future upside here with Kareem Hunt. I just don't trust it right now with where I've seen him ranked by some people. I think he's a low-end running back, too, that carries a lot of risk this weekend. And also, we just don't love that. This is not the old Chiefs offense. You can't be giving this offense credit, for being something we saw 2 or 3 years ago where you're going to get all these touchdown opportunities. This is a middling to below average offense right now. Yes, Patrick Mahomes going to gut out the win no matter what at the end of the game. In NFL, from an NFL perspective, they're fine because of Mahomes. But Kareem Hunt, I definitely have doubts about.
Also, remember, it's not like Isaiah Pacheco is guaranteed to miss the rest of this season. Dr. Jesse Morse actually on the record saying he personally believes Pacheco will be back in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So certainly something to keep an eye on there. I know I've seen Pacheco on a couple of these waiver wires. So if you have that open IR spot, guys, certainly not the worst one to stash. Time, though, for Friedman's favorite, talking about, again, someone who has been finding the end zone a lot lately. Rams RB1 Kyren Williams going up against the Raiders defense, Friedman, that, again, don't want to say anyone's quitting out there, but if we had to pick a couple teams, Browns, Jaguars, and yes, I think the Raiders probably nearing the top of that list.
Yeah, Kyren Williams, again, I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know and saying like, hey, this guy's really good at football. But for me, again, the question is, I have him at RB2. Should I actually have him at RB1 this week? You know, like I think there's a case to be made there. It is a perfect spot. The Rams are favored by almost a touchdown at home, off the bye, against a Raiders defense, Ian, that you mentioned, like, people might just be quitting at this point. They're ranked number 28 in rush DVOA, and they are missing their top interior lineman and defensive tackle, Christian Wilkins, who is on IR. So situationally, the spot doesn't get really much better than that. And it's not as if Williams needs much of a situational boost anyway. 5 games this year, 431 yards, 7 touchdowns from scrimmage, 95 carries, 15 targets. I'm expecting Puka Nacua is again out this week. Cooper Kupp practicing, but still skeptical he plays with the ankle injury. And so I think, again, we have a situation with Williams as the clear guy in that offense that everything funnels through. I think he has a great chance of surpassing 20 touches, which he has done in each of the past 3 games. And despite his small size, just 202 pounds, he's pacing to replicate last year's effort, 15 touchdowns, over 1,300 yards from scrimmage. Just situationally, everything is coming together for him to smash this week. And it's not like that he should be ranked highly. That's not the question. Like, the question is, should he be the number 1 running back this week?
As Freeman mentioned, 3 straight top 10 finishes, and he has improved as the season's gone on, but this seriously feels like his floor as long as they are going to continue to ignore Blake Corum and, I guess, Ronnie Rivers as well. Kyren and Zamir White, the only running backs with at least 50 touches this year, averaging under 4 yards per touch. So goes to show, guys, that volume and scoring opportunities go a hell of a long way in fantasy football land. Takes us, though, to our sicko start of the week. Dwain talking about, I guess, Jags RB1 Tank Bigsby. I hope RB1 Tank Bigsby. Again, Travis Etienne still dealing with a hamstring injury, but if there was going to be a matchup where we see Jacksonville get to play with that again, kind of run friendly, positive game script, you would think it'd be at home in London against the Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know how to read injury reports or what injury speak means anymore. Typically, week to week means you're probably not practicing the week they just called you week to week. But ETN is a limited practice participant, so who knows? When I wrote this yesterday, I was pretty sure that Travis Etienne wasn't going to be available. But looking at it, Bigsby's only in 38% of starting lineups right now, and some of it probably has to do with the uncertainty around ETN. But he's a free agent in actually 34% of Yahoo leagues. So if he is, guys, make sure you go pick him up. But looking at Bigsby, it's one of these situations where a lot of managers that had picked him up and they're listening to all of us talk about, man, look how good Tank Bigsby looks. Look how efficient he is. One of the best running backs in the league. And so people put him in their lineup. Naturally, what happens? He has an absolute dud. But it wasn't due to him, Ian. It was due to the fact that they just got so far behind over in London against the Bears. That flipped the game script. And even though Travis Etienne was hurt, it was really Dearness Johnson that came in and took over that pass down role. On one hand, that's a negative because we would hope that Bigsby would actually get a larger role as well when ETN went down. But here's what I'm going to say. You're playing the Patriots this weekend. You got to stay over in London. The Patriots are having to travel to come to you. I think this will be a much closer game. I would say I think the Jaguars are going to win. We'll see if Drake May is going to be healthy enough to play. But in a closer game, I think you're looking at a player that's going to get somewhere between 50 and 60% of the rushing attempts. And as good as he has looked, Ian, that makes him a low-end running back 2 at a minimum, and that would offer him running back 1 upside if somehow the Jags are up by like 10 points. This guy could go off for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns if they really do have a nice leading game script going. So you got to continue to believe in the talent, guys. And even if Travis Etienne is back, honestly, I think the other thing we saw is I don't know that changes Tank Bigsby's role. He has led Travis Etienne in rushing attempts the last 2 times they've played together. So I'm not going to necessarily move him that much further down if for some reason Travis Etienne is available. Probably move him from low-end running back 2 to like high-end running back 3.
And it's this weird dynamic because we're used to seeing the backup running backs be more the undersized scat backs who do benefit from lighter boxes, and accordingly, sometimes you get the inflated yards per carry totals. But if anything, I'm guessing that defenses expect the Jaguars to run more often when they have Tank back there, and it just hasn't mattered. 7.2 yards per carry, guys. That is first among 61 qualified running backs this year. Last year, dead last at 2.6. So I know they changed the criteria for NFL comeback player of the year. And even if they hadn't, Sam Darnold probably gets the nod. But Tank Bigsby, for you running back diehards out there, certainly belongs in that conversation. Let's get some wide receiver goodness in our riser of the week, Dwain. Ravens wide receiver Zay Flowers again in the aforementioned Monday night shootout against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, so I mean, Flowers, the interesting thing here with the Ravens offense is it's just really condensed around one player in the passing game, and he's it. With Mark Andrews not getting to be on the field, this is huge for Flowers. So Flowers right now sitting at a 28% target share, Ian. The tricky part about Zay Flowers is this can feel like a Jekyll and Hyde type offense, not in whether or not they're going to play well, but if they get ahead and they can just keep running the ball, and you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, why would you stop running the ball? He can get into these situations where they just don't throw it enough, and that's really what can hurt his value. They have a minus 5% drop back rate over expected, so they're one of the most run-heavy teams in the league with that dynamic duo they have. But I will say the Buccaneers are one of these teams that do sometimes get other teams to come off their game plan a little bit in the run game because of Vita Vea and some of the guys they have up front. They've not been that great against the run this year, but teams still seem to respect that. So I think there's an opportunity here. We've already talked about it before when we talked about the other side of the matchup. There's going to be a lot of points in this game between Tampa and between the Ravens. So when we look at that sort of game, man, it's really a big opportunity for the number one pass catcher by far on the Ravens. The other thing I just want to say real quick, this guy can do everything, and you've mentioned it, Ian. I know they kind of lock him down and use him around the line of scrimmage. He can beat you intermediate. He can beat you deep. He can beat you after the catch. He can beat you over the top. I think Zay Flowers is actually one of the best wide receivers in the league, and so in any given game, there's way more upside than even what we've seen. How many yards did he have? Like 130 at halftime last week. And then the game script got him. They didn't have to throw that much. They just ran the ball. So that's the tricky part about him. But I have him as a borderline wide receiver one this weekend because, man, this is a juicy matchup with a chance for a lot of points.
And obviously, Todd Monken's system working just fine. And I think Rashad Bateman deserves a little bit of credit as well. Not that he's becoming a viable fantasy guy. Again, it is the Zay Flowers show. I get it. But, I think part of the reason why Zay isn't getting more downfield opportunities is because you do turn that all 22 on guys. And Rashad Bateman has been running some crisp routes out there. Kudos to the former first-round pick. Finally looking healthy and accordingly making some plays. Takes us, though, Dwain, to the faller. Amari Cooper, after everything you've said this week, what are we doing?
Well, Amari Cooper's a riser for the rest of the year, but we also have to be, we've got to be sober-minded about this stuff. He's joining a Bills passing attack. He knows none of the plays. He doesn't have any chemistry yet built in with Josh Allen. I would bet on him being active. Have you guys looked at the Bills wide receiver room? It's terrible. Amari Cooper actually not even knowing what he's doing is going to be good enough to replace like two of these people. So he's going to be on the field. But it's just really tough in that scenario, Ian. He might play 30-40% of the snaps. I expect they're going to have some design stuff that they're going to scheme up for him. Look, Amari Cooper can come out and run these slant route and intermediate things. He knows how to work a cornerback and get open. And a lot of that, see it, throw it. So Josh Allen and him, they're going to be able to be on the same page as those sort of things. I just don't think they're going to be able to do all the things to open up, the playbook. I will say this. Amari Cooper is the one wide receiver, Ian. We have seen change teams that just clicked immediately. He did it when he left the Raiders to come to the Cowboys. Actually kind of changed our whole perspective on how quickly a wide receiver can acclimate and still be a high-end weapon. So if anyone can do it, it's him. This weekend, though, again, I'm being the Friedman wet blanket here. I've got him as a borderline wide receiver 3. So he could be in your lineup depending on how big of a league you're playing in. But if you're playing in an 8-team league, and you've got two starting wide receivers and a running back, don't get sucked into, it's Amari with Josh. I get excited and want to see that. You're going to get a chance to do that. Just don't do it this weekend. Oh, also, Titans. Titans have been amazing against the pass. So you have on top of all this, you have a really tough matchup in the passing game.
I was about to say Freeman. I know L'Jarius Sneed has helped, really turn that Titans secondary into a problem. You on the same page as Dwain, where Amari Cooper, probably someone that doesn't need to be forced into lineups, at least for this first week.
Yeah, I think he doesn't need to be forced into lineups. I will say, looking at the rankings, I'm higher than everyone else on Amari, but this was more of like an initial reaction. I think everything that Dwain said is spot on, especially the matchup going against the Titans. Number one in defensive dropback success rate. Their secondary really has turned it around. And so, given the fact that at home, the Bills close to 10-point favorites, they might not even need to throw the ball all that much anyway. With this being the first week with Amari Cooper, you could see how they might slowly integrate him into the system. So yeah, initially I was thinking high end wide receiver 3. Now I'm probably going to be bumping him down a little bit.
Takes us to Freeman's favorite Patriots wide receiver 1, I guess we can say it. Demario Pop Douglas scored his first career receiving touchdown last week. Accordingly said he was going to sleep with the football that evening. So gotta love that. Going into, again, London to face a Jaguars secondary, Freeman, that hasn't exactly been great at slowing down opposing passing attacks.
Yeah, it feels disgusting to talk about any Patriots player as like someone who, hey, you want to get this guy in your starting lineup. But slot bound Douglas, weeks 1 and 2, did almost nothing. But in the months since then, he has, as you mentioned, really been the team's number 1 pass catcher. 75% route rate, 32% target rate, 30% target share. With that, he's had 233 yards and a touchdown, also a 9-yard rush. Last week, Drake May becoming the starter really seemed to bring out the best in Douglas. 6 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. And this week, it could be even better. The Jags are number 1 in largest fantasy boosts allowed to wide receivers, and they might be without their starting slot cornerback, Darnell Savage, who had a concussion last week, exited early, did not return. So a little bit skeptical he plays this week. That means in his absence, we should get rookie slot cornerback, Jerrion Jones. That guy's been bad. 54.7% PFF coverage grade, 9.8 yards per target allowed. So that means if you have him, you're starting Douglas, and he's available on waivers in a lot of leagues. That feels like someone you could pick up and plug in right away.
Only potential negative, again, that aforementioned Drake May knee issue, but doesn't sound overly serious. Not going to get too worked up just yet. And then also keep an eye on this weather. Shout out Kevin Roth at RotoGrinders. Guys, if you ever just need a quick snapshot of the potential issues to worry about, rotogrinders.com/weather/NFL. This is the one game he has a yellow coat on, potentially showers and 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. But he did note it is in London where the soccer stadium shape might be able to cut down on some of that wind impact. So again, something to keep an eye out, and let me be the 100th fantasy person to remind you this week to get those lineups set before that 9:30 a.m. kickoff on Sunday. Finally, it takes us to our sicko start of the week. Noticing a theme here, Dwain. We love this Vikings passing game going up against the Lions, and yes, Justin Jefferson should be getting most of the volume, but don't sleep on Jordan Addison potentially booming as well.
Yeah, Jordan Addison only in 31% of lineups right now on Yahoo. I have him in my top 24 this weekend. You've got a matchup against the Lions that have been cooked by pretty much everyone. You've got Jordan Addison. You talk about a guy when you flip on the film. Anyone thinking that this guy is not a potential wide receiver 1 in the future, they're just wrong. He can beat any cornerback. He turns people around, gets them on skates all the time. Right now, they're using him deeper down the field. Dude, you won't. I don't know that you'll find anyone running better double moves than Jordan Addison right now in the league. And him and Sam Darnold, man, they have barely missed on some major downfield shots. And Darnold's given them to him. 17.9 yards average depth of target right now for Jordan Addison. So you mentioned it, Ian. The targets are mostly going to go to Justin Jefferson, and he's got a great matchup. He's Justin Jefferson. He's the king, man. He's going to get it all. But I think in this game, you're going to have a really good chance for Jordan Addison to put up a wide receiver 1 performance. Like, I think wide receiver 2 is probably his floor this weekend, and he can do that on 2 catches. He had a 28% target share last weekend. So there's also, or the week before last, they were on bye last week. So there's a chance that this could also just be a little more target share to Jordan Addison before we fully get the TJ Hawkinson show up and rolling. But again, I've got him easily over names like Darnell Mooney, George Pickens, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Josh Downs, easily starting him over all those players. So you guys got to get him in more of your lineups.
Nice potential buy low candidate, even if it just is for the next month as well. And I would also throw Devontae Smith in there. Again, just some of these guys who are more so in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range until we get the great matchups, and Vikings and Eagles really over the course of this next month or two, better spots than just about anybody. So again, those are our wide receiver ranks. Always check them out at FantasyLife.com. Fellas, let's quickly cover some tight end goodness here, starting with Freeman's favorite. If there's one thing we can like in Las Vegas right now, or at least with the Raiders, we like a lot of things in Las Vegas, but Brock Bowers, Freeman, going up against a Rams defense that, hey, had a bye week to maybe improve some things, and they better because they were pretty freaking miserable before.
Yeah, again, not saying anything revolutionary by saying, hey, Brock Bowers, get him in your lineup. But like the question is, how high should we have him? I'm thinking about having him number 1 this week. Ahead of Kittle, ahead of Kelsey. I mean, it might be reasonable. Being pessimistic about Brock Bowers, like I will just say, I was wrong. Like entering the season, I was like, rookie tight end. I don't know if I really want much exposure to that. Raiders offense might not be that good. Have to compete with Davante Adams for targets. But through 6 weeks, he has looked awesome. And he could be even better moving forward without Davante Adams on the team. And then for this week, he could additionally be without wide receiver Jacoby Myers, tight end Michael Mayer. And by the way, the Michael Mayer absence is interesting. Like no one has really reported on it, but like that could extend indefinitely. And if that's the case, then it could just be Brock Bowers all the time. Last week, he had a career high 83% route rate, which turned into 971 receiving on 10 targets. And that was, again, without Adams, Myers, and Mayer. And then the matchup is perfect. The Rams are number 32 in defensive pass DVOA against tight ends, and they are missing free safety John Johnson. Like by the end of the season, Bowers legitimately might be the greatest rookie tight end of all time. Like that is well within the range of outcomes. And at this point, like it might even be probable.
I have a new article I'm doing on Fridays, guys. 32 facts about, 32 teams, 1 per team. Funny how that works. And yeah, for the Raiders, most yards per game by a rookie tight end in NFL history. 1961, Mike Ditka still holding the crown at 76.9, but already in second place. Yes, it is Brock Bowers with 64 for the time being. So gotta love us some Brock Bowers, and maybe, just maybe, Dwayne, gotta love us some Dalton Schultz. Would be great to see the man, I don't know, catch 5 passes, score a touchdown, gain 35 yards. None of those things have happened yet this year, but hey, maybe this Sunday in a potential shootout against the Packers, we finally see the Texans' high-priced tight end make up some major moves in the box score.
Yeah, good job. I knew you need to get your shade in on Dalton Schultz. We have a shade segment every week. I figure we could just talk about Dalton Schultz, and then the next week, like talk about his brother. The next week we could like bash his mom. But yeah, looking at Schultz, look, 34% of starting lineups, so he's not in many of them. He's a free agent in 31% of the leagues. Last week he was a tight end 20. To your point, Ian, didn't really come through. Only 6.7 fantasy points. But if you look at the underlying data, like it's actually really good for Brock Bowers. For Dalton Schultz, 28% target share last weekend. And if you look at his utilization score, it's a 7.2 over the last 2 games. Remember, Nico Collins 2 games ago basically was done at halftime. So since Nico Collins has been out, we've actually got a tight end 1 from a utilization score perspective for Dalton Schultz. So I just think that the positive regression is going to hit. I've got him as a low-end tight end 1. Actually, I've got him as a mid-range tight end 1 this weekend. I've got him ahead of Tucker Kraft, got him ahead of Kyle Pitts. I think there's a lot of guys you could be starting Dalton Schultz over. And again, he's available in 31% of the leagues, only in 34% of starting lineups. So he needs to be in more.
Season high 8 targets last week in that first game without Nico Collins. Almost had a touchdown on what ended up being an interception. If Stroud had gotten the ball up a little bit higher, I think Schultz could have had a chance to come down with it. So again, that was our quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight ends. Risers, followers, Freeman's fave, and sicko starts. You guys can find Dwayne's ranking article for free at FantasyLife.com, along with the rest of our consensus ranks exactly in that same spot. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Dwayne and I will be back tomorrow a.m. to break down all the fantasy relevant injuries. But until then, enjoy a masterclass in Thursday Night Football featuring the Saints and the Broncos. How can you not be romantic about this game? So for Freeman, for Dwayne, for producer Kelsey, for producer Matt, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.